Okay, let's start our discussion. The people will keep on joining. So in my yesterday's class, if you can recall, we were able to talk about something about the tetrahedral voids which are there in a FCC lattice. Why we are concerned about FCC, BCC mostly is because we know already that most of our metals which are of concern to us, they are belonging to these particular crystal structures only. We were able to arrive at this conclusion that the R value or the ratio of the R to R in the case of tetrahedral void here happens to be 0.225 times R. I have made you understand what is the meaning of this already. We were at the next slide where we already saw that the location, where is the location of these voids? So where are these voids located here? And we can observe here in this particular diagram that the tetrahedral voids in a CCP unit cell, they are located in this particular tetrahedron. So this is the tetrahedron which we referred to as yesterday, which is forming these voids here. So these four atoms, one corner atom and the three face atoms, they combine together, they give us this tetrahedron, and this is particularly the void which is being created here in a FCC system. And similarly, we are able to now get an idea that because there are 8 corners, so you have 8 tetrahedral voids and 4 atoms in a unit cell, which gives me that there are 2 voids per atom in this particular case here. Okay, let's go to the next important category of voids. Why we are referring to voids, you will come to know just after this discussion on the voids and their size. Then we will go to imperfections, or when we'll talk about solid solutions today. So the voids, the second type of voids which you see now, they are called as octahedral voids. The previous one were tetrahedral voids. The octahedral voids, they are created at the location which we are trying to show here, that now the octahedral voids are created here. So this is the location where we create the octahedral voids, which is visible to you. And the shape of these voids happens to be in the form of an octahedron. So this is why they are called as the octahedral voids. This is precisely the reason why they are called as octahedral void. So if you remember, if you compare this, you were able to see that a tetrahedral void was created at this location, one B atom at the top and the 3 atoms of A layer at the bottom, or vice versa, three layers of the B atom and then 1 layer of the A atom at the bottom. That is what we were able to see. But whereas the second type of voids which we are now looking at, they are available here at this location when you are able to stack the atoms in this particular stacking sequence here. So we are just showing the 2 layers here, and we are able to create these voids between A and B plane of atoms here. So what is coming up here is the second type, as I said, and the shape of these voids, it looks like an octahedron, and that is why they are referred to as an octahedral void. The size of this void, or again the largest spherical atom, the blue one which you see observe here, which can be accommodated in this void, which is now represented with the help of these 4 atoms here. So why you are showing it as 4 atoms, why I am doing it, I will let you know in a moment, maybe in the next slide, that what are these 4 atoms. For the time being, you can just see here that our main aim will be to understand that where they are located in the CCP system or in the FCP structure there. For the time being, we are saying that these 4 atoms, they are actually located here in this particular plane. So the plane which I'm referring to is this one. I'm showing it in the octahedron here. And we are saying that, okay, the 4 atoms are located here at the 4 corners in this 3 dimensions here. So, and I'm looking at it from the top. So when I look at it from the top, this is what is the view from the top here. You have you can see here that I'm talking about the what you say, if the larger atoms happens to be iron atoms, I can just say that they are available to us here. And I want to put a smaller atom inside, which may be a carbon or something else, or I say it will have a radius small r. So I'm again talking about the two terms, the radius of the larger atom and the radius of the smaller atom. Easier to get a ratio here because we just say that the diagonal of the square that you are now able to see, the side of the square happens to be 2 times r. The diagonal of the square happens to be root 2 into 2r. And we also know that this diagonal, that is root 2 into 2r, is also equal to 2r plus 2r. This is r plus r, 2r. So this can also be written as 2 times r plus 2 times r. This is what is written, 2 times r plus 2 times r, which gives me it is also equal to root 2 into 2 times r, and tells me that r can now be, we can get it as r is equal to 0.414 times r. If I compare this value of r is equal to 0.414 times r with the value which I got for, now this is one which we got for the octahedral voids. If you remember yesterday, we were able to get this r to r ratio for the tetrahedral voids. Can anyone tell me what was the value?
0.225.
0.225.
Yes, it was 0.225 times r. So in the case of a tetrahedral void, it was 0.225, whereas in the case of an octahedral one, it is the 0.414 times r. So what is basically observed that the voids that you talk about here, they are these voids or octahedral voids, they are larger. They are larger than the tetrahedral voids. They are larger in size. What is the consequence of this? We will have to appreciate that later. But right now, the observation and our calculations tell us that it happens to be on a larger side, and these voids are larger than what we see in the case of your tetrahedral voids. Now the question is where these 4 atoms are, or where the plane which you are referring to, where is this plane, or which is this plane in a unit cell? So where is this plane in a CCP unit cell? That is what we are interested to know. So if I look at this again in a different figure, now I show the same thing, the same plane, but in a more colorful manner, and then we find that this smaller one happens to be having a radius of r. Although in this figure, all atoms are shown with the same radius, but these are having a larger radius. And this figure explains to me the same thing which we just saw in our previous slide here, that this is the location of the octahedral voids happens to be. Okay, and where are these atoms located at? Let us see that where are these voids located at, sorry. So the first one that you see here is here. So we have an octahedron being created here, and accordingly you will have a void located here at this point. This is the void which I am trying to refer to here. Obviously, again, the size of the atoms, the blue one is shown as a smaller one, and that is why it appears like there's lot of space, but they are of a larger size, and that is why the void size happens to be less as compared to the size of the blue atoms. But geometrically, I can see here that if I am interested about the coordinates of this octahedral void, which is at the center of the unit cell, it happens to be half, half, half. It happens to be half, half, and half. So this is the first location where these voids are located. And this is what looks like to us as a octahedron now. And accordingly, the voids are also shown. The black one happens to be the void space or the coordinates of the center of the void here. We are interested about some more locations. So this is one location where you will find octahedral voids of a larger size, means larger than the tetrahedral voids in a CCP unit cell. Then we see that what is the other place where they are located. And if you remember this slide, if you remember this figure here, I think you remember this. We use this to make you understand that what are these A, B, C layers. What are these A, B, C layers? And yesterday also, when we talked about your Miller indices of planes, we were able to establish these planes as a family of 111 planes. Is it correct?
Yes.
We were able to
Yes,
do
sir.
it. We were able to do it already. So this is we will find here that this is how it looks like in our previous figures, like this one, which I see already available to us. And let us compare it with now what we saw in my previous slide, that where are these voids located? So one place we already said that these voids are located at the center of the unit cell here, but how they are formed? This is how they are formed here. So we understand now that you have these three atoms belonging to the C layer, and you have these three atoms, the brown ones, which we say are available to us in the B layer. And this is what creates the octahedral voids here. A similar thing happens in A and B, B and C, and then it continues, and those voids are available to us. So the simple understanding here happens to be that this is where the location of the void is as far as the center of the unit cell is concerned. There are other locations in which you will find more voids here, and we need to appreciate that what are those locations. So when we talk about the other locations of the octahedral voids, again I use the same figure here. I used it for understanding the stacking sequence A, B, C in the your HK and HK and L. And if I remember my previous slide, we were able to find that this is where octahedral void is located in a single unit cell at the center of the unit cell. If I just look at one of the unit cell, we find that this is where a void is located, and it is the repetition of what I just shown you in the previous slide. Now, if I add one more unit cell here, I have combined two figures now. I am showing the planes also and the location of the atoms also. So let's say I added two unit cells here. Things are not that much visible here. Again, I'll add one more unit cell here. And now it becomes somewhat clear that what will be the other location of the octahedral void. You can now see that the one which is shown with the dotted ones, it is in the center of the unit cell, whereas you have one more void located here. If you look at this, you have one more place where you will find these voids are. Can you see that? Where is that? At each of the edges. So if you look at this particular edge, which I'm trying to show you here, at this particular edge, if you try to concentrate there, you will find that at this particular edge, we find one more void here. Is it visible to you now? The octahedron is created here. 1, 2. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
So the
Yes, sir.
octahedron is created here. So you have one more void which is created here at each of the edges. We have a number of edges here which are available to us, and accordingly, and on each edge. So if you have an edge here, there's a void here. A void is available here at this location, at this location, at this location, at these locations. So wherever the edges are of the unit cell of a CCP system, at those locations you have octahedral void which is coming into picture, which is what we observe is there. And if you compare it with this figure now, if you now compare it with this figure, which is shown here, which was there in the last slide also, you shall be able to appreciate that where what are the atoms which we are referring to. So we were saying that you have this as the C layer of atoms. 1, 2, and 3 are the C layer of atoms. They are located in the C layer. And incidentally, now I can see that where these atoms are. So you find that in this octahedron, you have the one located here, the second one here, and the third one here. They are all located in this plane. And if you now see that it was named as A, B, C, similarly, the planes were shown there. So you have this location here, and then the second is here. The three more. So these are in the second layer. So this is how this atom, this is the plane which we were concerned about. This is the plane in which the void is created. In the center of the unit cell, this was the plane in which the void was created. So you have these voids being created at each of the edges of the unit cell. Similarly, here also you will have a void, and so on. And this is what is the understanding happens to be, that what is the location of these voids. So let's go forward and see where these voids are located. So you have the ones which I've shown you already. The unit cells, two stacked on each other, and they show you the two octahedral voids, one here at the center of the unit cell. Similarly, there is another one at the center of the second unit cell. If I add one more unit cell here towards the right, and then try to imagine that where is the one which is being created at the edge of the unit cell, at the edge of the unit cell. So we find this is how this is created. So you have one more octahedron being created at the each of the edges of the unit cell, and that is where this one is located. The second octahedral void is located. If I want to represent them neatly in a single unit cell, I can see that this is the location of the octahedral voids. I have only shown on one of the edges here, although it is there on all the edges which are there of this unit cell, but we are showing it on only on one of the edges. Accordingly, you have one here, one here, one here, everywhere. So on every edge you have one octahedral void which is located there. And we can now see that what is the number of these. So we see here that the void, one of them is located at the center of the at the center, and then one is located at each edge. So there's one here at the center, that is one, plus you have one located at each edge. So there are 12 edges. There are 12 edges which are, and each edge is shared by 4 unit cells. 4 unit cells. So it gives me 3 complete, and this gives me 4. So 1 at the center and 3 complete at the edges. Although there are 12, but as I said, they are shared by 4 unit cells there. And that is why the total number of octahedral voids in a one unit cell of the FCC structure happens to be 4. And incidentally, you find that the number of atoms in this was also 4. So you have then one octahedral void per atom in a FCC unit cell. In a FCC unit cell. So just by comparison with my yesterday's discussion, just to sum up, you can say here that FCC unit cell contains 2 types of voids. One of them is tetrahedral, the size of which is given by 0.225 times r, means it can accommodate. It's not the size; it is the largest sphere that it can accommodate. And similarly, the octahedral void, in which this ratio of r to r is 0.414. So you have the second one, which we are just able to see it today. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's move forward. And this is how they look like. So you can get this animation, not animations exactly, just pictures there. So you can see here exactly that what they look like. So we are just showing one of the octahedral voids and one of the the tetrahedral voids. 3D gives you a better imagination that why it is octahedron and why it is a tetrahedron. So that is done. Let's move forward. There's one more way to look at the same thing, that the octahedron that you saw was being created like this. And if you recall your discussion about 111 family of planes, I can simply say that the 8 faces of this octahedron, they are all nothing but belonging to the 111 cubic family of systems. In a cubic system, they belong to the 111 family of planes, all of them. So there are eight edges here, 8 faces I can say here, or 8 planes out of which those faces are available, and they all belong to the 111 family of planes in a cubic system. So we're providing a lot of information. If you are not noting it down, it will not help you in the test. These are very, very small informations, but they need to be retained somewhere. If you're not retaining them, obviously impossible to collect that sometimes from Google also. It's not really possible. Okay, so this is regarding your FCC. This is regarding your FCC structure. Now, the other important crystal structure about which we may be interested is the BCC one. So we have talked about the voids in the case of FCC structure, and similarly, you have now information about the BCC structure, that what are the kinds of voids and what is the size of these voids. I will not go in, I will just rush through them. I will tell you the answer, that what will be the value of the void size, or the largest sphere that you can accommodate, again in the case of your BCC crystal structure. So going forward, your BCC crystal structure something looks like this, and we already know that we have this relationship between A and R, that is A is equal to 4 upon root 3 times R. Going by this, you can again find that there are 2 kinds of voids again in the BCC structure. The name remains same. You have the tetrahedral voids, and similarly the octahedral voids, which are available to us in the case of BCC crystal structure also. So the first one that you see here is the tetrahedral voids, which are located in a BCC structure, and this is where they are located. The location I'm trying to show you, that this is where they are located, and how this tetrahedron is formed there. So this is how they are located. This is a single tetrahedron, a regular tetrahedron. Whereas in the case of your FCC system, the tetrahedron was a regular tetrahedron. Here it is not a regular tetrahedron. The sizes are different. The edge lengths are also also different. So this is how they look like. So we understand here that in the case of your BCC system, as I said, I'm not going to the details here, but I'll just rush through that, and we'll just see that where they are, what is the size pattern that we are going to go for. So we understand that it is an irregular one. The second voids which we see are available are octahedral voids in the BCC one, and they are located here at the center of each face. So you have center of the each face where you find the OH voids are located, and the edge centers also, and at the edge centers also. So at the edge and at the face center, that is where the octahedral voids are located in the case of a BCC system, and this is where we find them located here. We can calculate the size and their relative value here. I will just take you to the values where you have the end results that we are looking for.
Sir?
Yeah.
सर ये ऑक्टाहेड्रन बन नहीं रहा, मतलब दिख नहीं रहा कि बना हुआ है.
दिखेगा अभी मैं आपको बता नहीं रहा हूँ ना. आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू स्टिक हियर बिकॉज इट विल टेक लॉट ऑफ टाइम, एंड आई विल मे बी शेयर a separate video for this, that is where we will come to know that what is the size in which we are talking about here. For the time being, I just want to tell you that what is the radius ratio. So the radius ratio that you find here for the first kind of voids in the case of this BCC tetrahedral are 0.29 times R, 0.29 times R, and the radius ratio in the case of the second one, the radius ratio in the case of the second one, that is your octahedral voids, which we see are available to us here. So obviously, if you look at it carefully in this 2D animation, it's a bit tricky to see that how this octahedron is formed. But if you look at it carefully, you will see how the octahedron is getting formed. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there are 4 at the back. That's how the 8 faces are generated here. Obviously, because they are interfering here, so you cannot just see, even if I draw a line, it will not show you that where it is. It will interfere here. So you are creating what we refer to as octahedral void.
Irregular?
Yeah.
Sir, irregular है मतलब यहाँ थोड़ा सा.
Your tetrahedron that you saw there is irregular. The octahedron that you create here is again an irregular octahedron. That's what the take is, that the void size in the void shape in the case of your BCC system happens to be an irregular one. It's an irregular shape of the void. The actual value that you get, and you can calculate that based upon the calculations here, is the R to R ratio happens to be 0.15152 times R, which we find is smaller in the case of when I compare these values with your FCC structure. And this is how the calculation can be done. I will share a separate video because I just want to cover some other topics today. And octahedral voids, again, if you observe them here, this is how, again, you can see that where the tetrahedral voids are and then where the octahedral voids are in the case of a BCC structure. Now, coming to the radius ratios, I will come to the radius ratios in my next slide. But before going there, I'm just trying to get some data for two elements which we'll try to combine. One of them is carbon, which has atomic radius of 77 picometers, nearly around 0.7 angstroms. And the second one is iron, which is having 124 picometers, means 1.24 angstroms. So if I pick up this data from this basic slide regarding the atomic radius here, let's come to this table where the summary of the things I have just listed here. So what you see here, that in the case of BCC and FCC, and why I have taken iron and carbon, because iron actually is available to us in both the crystal structures at different temperatures. It is BCC also, it is FCC also at different temperatures. So if you sum up what you saw in your previous slides, yesterday we were able to derive these values, that the octahedral voids in a FCC structure, the radius ratio is 0.414, tetrahedral voids 0.225. We didn't derive it for BCC today, but you can look it in the literature that the values are 0.152 and 0.29 times R. So incidentally, we find that there is some anomaly, seems to be an anomaly here, that the larger voids are octahedral one in the case of your FCC system, whereas in the case of BCC structure, the tetrahedral voids are larger. I say it's an anomaly, and if you compare their relative size also, the relative size wise also, which one seems to be larger? Size of voids.
FCC, sir.
Yeah, so from it seems to me that the void size for FCC is larger relative to what you see in the case of a BCC structure. I say it's an anomaly because on the other hand, if you talk about the packing fraction, we say CCP is closely packed and it has APF 0.74, whereas BCC we say is not closely packed and it has a APF of 0.68. So although you have a CCP system which is more closely packed, but still the nature of or the geometry is such that the void size is also larger in the case of your FCC structure. Octahedral voids are larger, and in the case of BCC1, we have the the tetrahedral voids which are larger to us. The table, if you look at it here, is now telling me some data in terms of values. So I have added one atom. I have added one information here. The radius of the Fe atoms I've just added is 1.24 angstroms, and the carbon atoms have a radius of 0.71 angstroms. And if you now compare the same thing is listed here with some calculations, not the formula. We have put the value of R in these equations. When you substitute the value of R here as R is equal to 1.24 angstrom, you will get this result here. You will get this result here. So you have the BCC one, tetrahedral 1.29, we get is 0.29. So when you take the iron atom, the largest sphere which can be accommodated in Fe lattice, if it is in FC, if it's in BCC structure, is 0.37 angstrom. And if iron is available to us in FCC structure, the largest one will be 0.5. So this is the largest small size particle or sphere which can be accommodated. And when I compare it with the atomic radius of carbon, we find carbon atoms have atomic radius of 0.71 angstrom, which is actually higher than both the values. Is that right? You're able to get how these values are calculated?
Yes, sir.
We have just substituted the value of R as the radius of iron atom, 1.24 angstrom, and then that is how you calculate the small r, that is the radius of the smaller atom which can be accommodated in these voids. If you recall from your basic studies, pure iron is BCC at room temperature. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
If I add carbon atoms into it to form an alloy, we'll see later on that what is an alloy. What will happen to these carbon atoms? Where they will go? When you start putting these atoms, carbon atoms, in the iron, pure iron, they will start going into the interstitial voids. And obviously the carbon atom size is 0.71 angstrom. So in its BCC form, carbon atoms will prefer to settle in which voids? In its BCC form, in its BCC form at room temperature, when you add carbon atoms, they will prefer tetrahedral sites. They will prefer tetrahedral sites, although their size is almost double what is allowed, what is theoretically possible as a sphere. It is almost more than double even. I can say nearly not more than double, nearly double, slightly lesser than double value. And then when iron goes into FCC crystal structure at a temperature greater than 910 degrees centigrade, what will happen then? So you have taken, let us say, an alloy of iron and carbon, which contains, let us say, 1% carbon. So I have not added any more carbon atoms into your system. I have just heated it, and then I heat it at a temperature greater than 910 degrees centigrade. That's 1000 degree I heated up to. So I have not added any carbon, more carbon into the system. I have not removed any more carbon from the system. So what will happen to the carbon atoms once they were sitting in the tetrahedral sites? I start hitting them, the crystal structure undergoes a change, and you have a FCC system now in place, where their preference will be to move into now they will prefer to move into octahedral sites because the octahedral sites are larger, and this movement happens because of a phenomena which is known as diffusion. That is how atomic movement is taking place inside the system. That is, diffusion is happening. Carbon atoms are moving from one side to another side, occupying some other sites. And one more issue, in which sites they are more comfortable? It's a very generic question. In which chair you are a person having certain size. So if you sit in a small chair or in a chair which is moderately near to your size, you will be more comfortable in a larger chair. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So that's what we observe in the case of materials also. First thing, theory tells me that in a BCC structure, carbon cannot be accommodated into the interstitials of iron, theoretically. Is that right?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right? Theoretically, we say that it is not possible because the size ratio, the radius ratio is too different from what is possible. But still, we observe that it is there. So what is the answer for that then? The answer there happens to be that although the radius ratio is largely, a lot of difference is there, but still the carbon atoms, they try to accommodate the voids. Let us say this is a carbon atom which is trying to accommodate the void inside some, let us say I am accommodating them as the iron atoms now. Because its size is larger than what is permitted, so what it will do, it will push this iron atoms to the sides, or it will create what we call as a lattice strain. It will create lattice strain, because of which the lattice is elastic, somewhat elastic, so it will create a lattice strain in the system, and it may happen that you may be able to accommodate a small number or quantity of carbon atoms in iron BCC lattice. How many? We already have seen lately that the number of sites is also fixed. How many what we say octahedral and tetrahedral voids are available to us? That is also fixed. And I'll come to it in a moment. But for the time being, just for our generic understanding, we say it will be difficult for carbon atoms to go into the lattice point, into the interstitials or voids there. And that is why we say that solubility of carbon in iron is less. We will define the term solubility in a moment. But for the time being, just note it down. Solubility of carbon in iron is less in its BCC form. When it transforms to FCC form, so in FCC iron, the solubility of carbon increases. The solubility of carbon increases. One of the reasons happens to be that the void's size has now become larger, and now more number of atoms can be accommodated into these voids, although it is still lesser than what is theoretically there, but still now the carbon atoms have more space, and the probability of filling the voids here is larger as compared to it was there in the case of BCC iron. And we will see later on in our studies that when I refer to solubility of carbon in BCC iron, it comes to 0.22%, whereas 0.022%, whereas when it comes to solubility of carbon in FCC iron, it is nearly 2.1%. It's 2.1%. So this is one of the reasons why this solubility difference happens to be there in the case of our simple alloy, which we are referring to as steel. Okay, so I referred to this slide earlier also. I hope you remember that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We used it to understand the allotropic transformation of iron, which happens at 912. And we were able to conclude that iron, it becomes more denser it becomes more denser, and that is why shrinkage takes place. Volume of iron actually decreases when you heat it beyond 912. And one more thing is happening. The volume occupied per atom is also decreasing. From BCC is 0.012, it has now come to 0.011. So the volume occupied per atom decreases and iron becomes more denser. The density of iron increases. That is why the volume of iron also decreases. This was incidentally one of the questions which was posed to you. Okay, so if I look at this phenomena, and it was observed, it is reported in 1966 by Hume and Rothery, and we will see some more work related to Hume Rothery, that what is their utilization and what is the utilization of their work in our study regarding solid solutions. So what you observe here, that when I am plotting volume per atom versus temperature, volume per atom versus temperature for pure iron, we are plotting it for pure iron. So when I do that, we find that something strange is happening at this temperature, and this temperature is nearly what is our 912 degrees centigrade happens to be. So what is happening here? You can see that there is a sudden drop in the volume per atom. Volume per atom, similar to what you see here, the volume per atom decreases from this 0.012 to 0.1176. Same thing is observed here, and we can now see that this is the temperature at which the transformation of alpha iron, which is in BCC structure, is going to gamma iron, which is your FCC type structure. And this temperature is 912, and it is fixed for pure iron. But as you keep on alloying iron with carbon, as you keep on adding carbon atoms, or we can say nickel atoms or chromium atoms into iron, you will see that this 900 temperature 12 degrees is not fixed. It will keep on changing. It will keep on changing, and we can find it at the temperature at which this change is happening. Can you tell me that is there something which we can measure? I give you iron and pure iron and ask you, or I give you an alloy of iron and plus carbon which has a temperature of transformation which is unknown to you. That is, I do not know whether it will happen at 912 or 800 or 700. I am not sure, because it's not pure iron. Can we calculate then at the temperature by any means at which this transformation is happening? Is it possible? As an engineer?
Yes.
How?
Sir, we can heat it and check where the volume decreases rapidly.
Yeah, so you can actually find out or try to find out change in volume. Change in volume. And if you have studied strength of materials, it is called as dilatation. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Dilatation.
Dilatation. DILATATION. Dilatation. There is change in volume is happening. So if you are able to find out during the heating of pure iron or an alloy of iron and carbon, that particular temperature or a range of temperature during which this thing is happening, this abrupt change in volume of iron or iron plus carbon is observed, you can just say that that is the temperature at which this BCC to FCC transformation is happening. Is it right? So this BCC to FCC transformation is happening at that particular temperature. In this case, pure iron, it happens instantly at 912 degrees centigrade. The temperature remains constant. So you say you can do it with dilatation, and the instrument is available. It is called a dilatometer. Yes, I told you maybe already also. Dilatometer. It has to be very, very accurate. It has to be very, very accurate, because the sizes which we are referring to is too small. I may take a larger sample even, but still the change in volume will be very, very small. So I need a very accurate instrument for doing this exercise. For the dilatometer needs to be of quite a good accuracy for us to do this. And this is how engineers do it, or scientists do it, that they are able to find out the exact temperature at which this is happening, this transformation is happening. The reason of this will come out later, that why we want to find out that particular temperature. What is so interesting about this temperature? Okay, so it is clear here. Can I move forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I again sum up what we have been telling you in the last maybe few slides, that when I compare your BCC system with the FCC system, we find here that your size of the voids in the case of FCC are larger. So FCC voids are larger, but number is less. So you have 4 per unit cell octahedral type and 8 per unit cell tetrahedral type for FCC. Whereas when I compare to BCC now, 6 per unit cell and 12 per unit cell. So the BCC crystal structure, the voids are more in number, but smaller in size. Is it visible here? Through this data only, in a BCC structure, the voids of both types, octa and tetra type, they are more in number, but smaller in size. Whereas for your FCC one, the voids are larger in size, but lesser in number. They are larger in size, but their number is less. But still their size is larger. And this is where I take you back to my previous slide where I say solubility. So where, if I look at this unit cell, I say there are interstitials available. Without saying that where it are, you can see that this is one interstitial where it can fit. There's another interstitial where the carbon atom can fit. There's another one here. There is another one here. In a FCC one, again, there is an interstitial available here, then an interstitial available here, and available here also. But now the interstitial sites, we call them as interstitial sites now, in place of calling voids, the same meaning, interstitial void sites or interstitial sites. The term sites is more useful to us because the number of sites where a carbon atom, let us say in an iron carbon system or any other atom in a two element system can be accommodated, the number of sites at which carbon atom can sit in a FEC system is larger, is more in which case?
BCC.
BCC.
Yeah, so the interstitial sites are more in BCC, but their size is less. That's what we saw here, that they are smaller. The interstitial sites are less in number. They are less in number in the case of FCC, but their size is larger. And this simply tells me that when I was talking about the solubility, we said that in the case of your BCC iron, the solubility of carbon happens to be 0.022%. Very small amount of carbon can be accommodated into these interstitial. If I keep on adding more carbon atoms, nobody stops me for, I can add 50% carbon atoms into by weight into iron. What will happen to that carbon? So I give you a very hypothetical case. I have pure iron. I start adding 0.1% by weight carbon into it. Just measure and put it into a bucket, and it is in melted form, let us say. So what will happen if I put 0.1%? The carbon atoms, they will try to occupy. Yes.
The interstitial site.
Interstitials. Obviously, you keep on adding carbon from 0.1 to 1, 2, 3, 4. Let us say I go to 15%. So all of it cannot be accommodated into the interstitials because the number of sites is again limited. Although it is very large as compared to FCC, but still there is a limit, geometrical limit. That is what we talk about as the solubility limit geometrically. After that, if I keep on adding more carbon, 15, 10, 20, 30, what will happen? It will not accommodate into this what we call as interstitial sites, and a solid solution will not be formed. So you will have some part of the system as a FEC solid solution, whereas you will have C carbon available to us as such, not in a solution form, not in a alloy form. So a lot of carbon may be available outside, which is not accommodated within the lattice. So they may be just available to us in the system. Whereas a part of it, a very small amount of it, can be accommodated into a solid solution. And that is where the term solid solution we are now using time and again. And I will describe it in our next class today, not today, maybe next class, that what is a solid solution, and where this concept of voids is now, it will again get important to us, that we'll understand that what is these voids which are now coming into picture. And it's a similar figure that now we are trying to show, again a very old one I have picked up from 1962, where you find that where are the octahedral interstitials. These are octahedral sites for your BCC and FCC iron. So we find here the octahedral sites for your FCC lattice are, you can see here that they are at the center of the unit cell and they are at the edges of the unit cell. So this is what is available to us here at the edges of the unit cell. Again, this is the first time it was published, not very long ago, but again published in 1962, around 60 years ago it was done. This takes me to the end of today's class, where this is phase diagram, and we will have a lot of discussion on phase diagrams. So this completes my first topic on crystallography, the basics of crystallography. Voids, although they are not covered under crystallography, but I have just added that information here so that we are able to move into our next topic. Phase diagram, I just put a figure here, but we will not understand that what it is. We will understand it once the time comes. Our next topic we'll start is on imperfections in solids, that we have considered by now that the crystal lattice happens to be a perfect one. All the lattice points are occupied by the atoms. And then we saw that there are voids also, empty spaces also. We saw that, okay, this is the way the voids can be filled. But when you start filling voids, one way somebody can say that the iron has not now, it has lost its purity. It has become impure because you have put carbon into it. So carbon can be said, if it is done unintentionally, that it is an impurity into iron. That is one example where we see that there are imperfections. And we will now go towards what do we mean by imperfections. Many a times we intentionally create imperfections in solids so that you can create alloys which are helpful to us in increasing the strength of the material. Alloys generally are more stronger than their pure element counterparts. And this is where we will see that how that thing is useful to us and how you create alloys. Is it right?
Yes.